Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, I'm going to walk you through 10 lettering shadows that anyone can do. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using these Arteza Everblend markers just to make everything a little bit more colorful. Plus they blend really well for some of the shadow effects that we're going to use. I'm also using marker paper. Whenever you're using markers, it's a really great idea to use marker paper. The marker is smoother, so the fibers within the marker tip don't wear out quite as quickly because of that smoothness of the paper. So just a heads up right there, whenever you are using markers, marker paper is a great idea. So I'm going to set this aside. I've cut down a few pieces of marker paper that we can use right here for each one. And we're just going to jump into lettering shadow number 1. So with these markers, there's a chisel tip and then there's a bullet tip. The bullet tip has this color on it. Some marker brands, you don't know which ends is the bullet and which one's the chisel, and it can get really annoying. I love that these ones have this color band wherever the bullet tip is. So it's a really easy way to just grab the marker and to know which side to uncap. So this is what the bullet looks like, and then the chisel tip, your standard chisel tip right here. So I'm using 2 colors for this first one. I am using fuchsia and bubble bath. So this first shadow is what I'm calling the Monoweight hug. So I'm going to be drawing and using a capital sans serif A for all these examples just to show consistency, and that way it's really easy to compare and choose which lettering shadows that you would like to use in your own artwork. So for this one, I am using fuchsia and bubble bath pink, and I'm going to be drawing the letter for this one in the lighter pink. Okay, so for the Monoweight hug, it's going to be a very fine line where the shadow is going to go, and it's going to hug the letter. So it's going to be right on top of the edge of the letter. If you didn't download my highlight and shadows cheat sheet from last week's tutorial, I'll leave a link in the video description. You can just download that. And that cheat sheet shows you exactly where to place your highlights and your shadows. So just refer to the shadow cheat sheet on that and you'll know exactly where to put these. So for this one, I've got my darker pink right here, and I'm just drawing right along the edge of the letter. It's sitting right on top of that edge, which makes it that hug style. And it's just this one weight all the way through it. So it's a very subtle shadow, but it can be really eye-catching too. So that is our first lettering shadow, the Monoweight hug. On to the second one. The second one is our drop shadow. And for this one, in order to make the drop shadow, I'm going to draw the first A up in front with my darker pink. Okay, and for the drop shadow, all you want to do is repeat the exact same style and size of this first A, and you just want to offset it a little bit. So I'm going to go down and to the right just slightly and try to draw the exact same A again, right behind it. Okay, so that's our second one, the drop shadow. The third lettering shadow is the long shadow. So for this one, I've got 2 different colors right here. I've got the periwinkle, the lighter purple, and then the darker purple is violet. And I'm going to draw my A with a darker violet color. Okay, and we're actually going to just repeat the exact same thing we did with the drop shadow. We're going to create a drop shadow for our long shadow as a base for our long shadow. So I'm just going to replicate the same style of A, offset, so down and to the right, using my lighter purple, the periwinkle. All right, so once you have your drop shadow, you want to connect the outlying points. So the peak of our A right here, we're just going to connect it to the other peak. And then down here, the base of our A, we're going to connect that one and connect this one, and then just fill in all of the white space. Okay, so that is our third shadow, and that's our long shadow. Our fourth shadow is what I'm calling the color stacked shadow. And for this one, it's a little easier to see if I use tones of gray. So I have koala gray, cloudy gray, and fog gray. So I'm going to use the darkest color, the koala gray, for my A. All right, and we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the long shadow. So I'm going to create a long shadow with my lightest gray, which is the fog gray. Okay, once you have your long shadow all set, now you're going to grab the medium gray, which for this one, it's the cloudy gray. So in order to do the stacked part of the shadow, you want to grab this end of the A, and you're just going to extend it just a little bit right here. And then you're going to draw a line down the middle that meets this line right here. So I'm kind of going up from here, and I want to try and keep the exact same angle of this side of the A and the side of the A that is my long shadow. just like that. And then once you meet that line, you're just going to bring it back straight until it touches the edge right there. So it's kind of making like a block letter right here. And if you want more tips on block letters, I have a cheat sheet, which I'll also link to in the video description. And that's really helpful for this style of shadow. So I'm going to look at the thickness right here and replicate that same thickness for the inside of my A. And then just bring this one down and stop it short so I can draw this line, extend it, and have it meet it. And then just put a line right here where it meets the other edge. And now I can just color this in. All right, and then for our crossbar right here, I'm just going to draw another line that's the same thickness and keep it within that long shadow, this drop shadow right here. Okay, so that is the color stack shadow. If you wanted to drop another color in here, you have plenty of room. They don't all have to be the same exact size, just whatever size you decide from the very beginning. You want to maintain that size throughout that color. So I can add more right here if I wanted to, but I'm going to stop it right here at 3 different colors and move on to our 5th shadow. So our 5th shadow is what I'm calling the hatched shadow. So I'm going to return back to our purple, and I'm going to draw my A in the darker violet. Okay, and now I've got my lighter purple and I've got the bullet tip all ready to go. And what I want to do is just draw a bunch of lines that are as close to the same length as I can make them in the same exact angle. So this one can be a little trickier. Just practice a lot. Sometimes it's nice on a scrap sheet of paper if you just draw a bunch of lines that are the exact same angle and size. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I just draw a bunch of lines that are the same angle and same length. That's what you want to practice before you start doing this one. And then you just want to grab the side and refer to that shadows cheat sheet so you know where to put them. And you're just going to come all the way around your A, drawing the same size and angled lines. Okay, so that is our hatched shadow. Our 6th shadow is what I call the floating shadow. So the floating shadow is very similar to the Monoweight hug. It's the exact same thing, only this time we're not going to touch the edge of the A at all. We're going to leave it a space that's even all the way around our letter and then place this Monoweight shadow on it. So I'm going to use some blue for this one. I've got sky blue and cerulean blue for this one. So I'm going to use my cerulean for my letter. And then for the floating shadow, once again, refer to that shadow cheat sheet, and you can also reference your Monoweight hug. So what I'm going to do is, looking at this, I'm just going to create a space between where I begin this and where the letter is, and you want to maintain whatever space you decide throughout the rest of the letter wherever you're placing the shadow. Okay, so that is the floating shadow. All right, so number 7 is a riff off of our floating shadows. We're actually just going to be creating multiple floating shadows. So that is number 7. So I'm going to use sky blue for my letter. And now we're going to come in with our floating shadows. And you can go in any order that you'd like to color-wise for these. I like changing up the color as I move throughout. So I'm using 3 different colors right here. I've got my cerulean blue, my denim blue, and my sapphire blue. So I've got my bullet tip. I'm just going to put in my first floating shadow exactly what we did in number 6. And then moving on to our next color, this one we're just going to start just a little further down than the previous line. And that will make it look like it's slowly fading into the background. And I'm going to stop it short down here too. So you can see that little nudge right there will continue to make your eye believe that everything's fading into the background. This one I want to make go all the way to the edge because it's within the letter, but this is where it stops and this is where it starts. So your starting and your stopping points are where you want to have that little bit of a tick down. I made this one offset as well and down here. So now we're just going to put in our final color, which is our denim blue. Okay, so that is number 7, multiple floating shadows. Okay, moving on to number 8. This is our short shadow in Monoweight hug. All right, so this one is kind of similar to our long shadow, but then we're also integrating that Monoweight hug to it. So we want it shorter than our long shadow, and then we're going to add on the subtle shadow right here. So I've got some greens pulled. My light green is pale green, my middle green is apple green, and my dark green is forest green. So I'm going to use the middle green, the apple green, for my A. Okay, so now instead of repeating kind of like our drop shadow that we did for our long shadow, instead of repeating repeating our letter again, we're going to make it almost into a block letter. And I have a block letters cheat sheet, which I'll leave it in the video description that you can download, and that way you can reference that with where to draw your lines to make it look 3D. So essentially what you want to do is keep the same length line and angle, just like we did with our hatch shadows. And we're just going to draw a line up at the top, and then the base, crossbar, and then we're going to start connecting all of them. Okay, now you just want to color it in, and this will be our short shadow. You could also make a long shadow the same way, but if you're just getting started, sometimes it can be easier to do that drop shadow technique of drawing the duplicate letter and then coloring everything in after you connect it. All right, and then the last thing that we need to do is just put in our Monoweight hug. So I've got the forest green right here, and then we're just going to do the exact same thing we did with our Monoweight hug. We're going to place that line right on the edge and just do one stroke all the way around so it's nice and thin. So that is number 8, our short shadow and our Monoweight hug. All right, number 9 is our inner shadow. So instead of being on the outside, this time we're putting our shadows on the inside. So I'm going to use my lighter green color, this pale green right here for my A. Okay, and I'm actually going to leave this one uncapped because we're going to start blending our colors together. So I've got my green apple right here, and all I want to do is put a sliver along the inside edge of my A. And now I want to blend it, so I'm going to grab my light green right here, and I'm just going to kind of scribble along that edge to blend it out. Okay, and if you want to darken it up at all you have to do is come back in, repeat the same process. The wetter that your paper is with your passes of the markers, the more effective your blending will be of the colors between each other. So I'm just going to make one more pass while it's still wet, scribble it in. Okay, and hopefully you can see that on screen. It's a really cool effect putting in that inside, that inner shadow. So that is number 9, and we're moving on to our last one, number 10. All right, number 10 is what I'm calling the ribbon and overlap shadows. So this one's best accomplished with a script style letter. So I'm going to grab my pinks. I've got my bubble bath pink and my fuchsia pink right here. And I want to use the lightest color for my A. So I'm just going to draw a script capital A. And I'm going to integrate a little bit of faux calligraphy. So on my downstrokes, I'm just going to make them a little bit thicker. All right, and now we just want to integrate those shadows. You'll notice that with these markers, they take a little bit to dry, but once they dry, everything is uniform. So what we want to do is keep this uncapped again because we're going to blend just the same way we did with the inner shadow. And I've got my darker pink right here. And since this stroke is being overlapped by this downstroke, I need these edges to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to put just a little bit of ink on the edges right there and then come in with my light pink and pull it out so it starts to blend them. Okay, and then this stroke kind of comes down and overlaps the sliver of my stroke, so I'm going to put another little dot of color right here and blend that out. All right, and you just want to let your markers dry before you go in and make any other changes. That way you see everything accurately before adding any more additional shading. So that is our 10th lettering shadow. These are 10 lettering shadows that anyone can do. And just to make things super easy on you, I've put these all on a cheat sheet that you can download and use whenever you need some shadows or some extra embellishments onto your lettering. You can see that cheat sheet right here. And this is available in the video description. So just click that link, you can download it, and then you've got it to reference for any of your lettering in the future. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you can be notified of more lettering tutorials like this in the future. For more lettering tutorials and design freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is @everytuesday. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.